Now that we've talked about decimals and fractions and how to go back and forth between those two, now we're going to talk about what they look like if I have a visual representation of them. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen these pictures. You've held those rods and those squares, and you've worked with these manipulatives. My husband, Josh, when I was like printing out these notes, he's like, oh my gosh, I remember working with those in school, trying to like make place value and all that stuff. And so I'm sure you've seen it before if we had them when we were in school. So, in case you forget, again, you can always come back, take a look at this place value chart to help you out. But the biggest thing to remember here is that when we see this big, huge piece, do you remember how much each one of those little blocks is? Each one of those is 1/100th. So if I have one of these huge things, one of these big squares is how many? 100. And we can double check that if we count each side should be 10. So it'd be like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. 10, 4, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So each one of these big ones, if you count the sides 10 by 10, it's full of 100. We're only going to do part of these notes today. We're going to do the other half of them tomorrow. So make sure you don't lose these sets of notes. So I want to figure out what this picture is as a fraction and as a decimal. So I know again, how many blocks are there? I know there's 100 blocks. So would 100 be my numerator or my denominator? 100 would be my denominator. And then we need to figure out how many of them are shaded. How can we do that? We can count. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's a lot of counting and I'm only at 20. How much was each line again? 10 in each line. So I can count 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 51, 52, 53. So in this section, we have 53 blocks that are pink out of 100. Now that we've got that part of the fraction, can I simplify it? 53 is prime. The only numbers I can multiply to get 53 are 1 and 53. So we're good there. That's in simplest form. Now we want to turn that into a decimal. And again, if you think back, we kind of have to do the opposite of this. We have to go back and do the opposite of those notes. So here, I know my denominator is going to be 100. So how many numbers should I have after my decimal point? I should have 2 numbers after my decimal point. What would those numbers be? A 5 and a 3. 53 hundredths, 53 hundredths, tenths, hundredths. On number 2, those lines get a little bit harder to see, so I drew over top of mine. Hopefully you're able to see yours. Let's count the sides. Make sure we know what sides it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 10 by 10, so how big's the whole thing? 100. You try counting how many boxes are green. Pause the video, try on your own. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78. So we get 78 out of 100. Can we simplify that fraction? We sure can. So remember, we have to divide our numerator and our denominator by the same number to simplify our fraction. So what's a number that we know is going to go into 78 and 100? They're both even, so we know 2 at least is going to go in. So let's start with 2. We know 100 divided by 2 is 50, and 78 divided by 2. Let's do some division to find out there. For my people who like the box method, 78 divided by 2. 2 goes into 7 how many times? 3. 2 times 3 is 6. I subtract and carry. How many times does 2 go into 18? 9. We subtract and it comes out pretty. So 78 divided by 2 is 39. Can I simplify 39 and 50? To get 39, I can do 1 times 39. 2 doesn't work. I can do 3 times 13, but that's it. Does 1, 3, 39, or 13 go into 50? So that is our fraction in simplest form right here. That doesn't help us with our decimal, though. We need to see that original number for the decimal. So how many numbers should we have after our decimal point? 2. Tenths, hundredths. What number would go after my decimal? 0.78. 78 hundredths. 78 hundredths. Number 3 is a little tricky. What's different about 3? My sides are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if it's 5 by 5, how many squares are there? There's only 25 squares there. Things are getting tricky. How many squares are colored out of 25? 4. 4 out of 25. And now we need to get our decimal. That 0 point trick only works when what's my denominator? 100 or 10 or 1,000. There's 2 ways you can go about figuring out what this is as a decimal. One way, what does the fraction bar mean to do? You can divide. You can do 4 divided by 25. You can do 4 divided by 25. That's one way to do it. Or I need to get from 25 to 100 so that I can turn it into a decimal. Think about quarters. How many times can 25 go into 100? How many quarters do I need to make $1? I need 4. So what I could do is I could take this 25 times 4 to get 100. And what I do to my denominator, I have to do to my numerator too. So to go from 25 to 100, I do times 4. And if I do the same thing for my numerator, I'll get an equivalent fraction. 4 times 4 is 16. So this is equivalent to 16 hundredths. This is equivalent to 16 hundredths. This is my answer, but getting it to my denominator being 100 is one way that I can get my decimal. So what would 16 100ths be in decimal form? 0.16. Yes, 16 hundredths. And to prove to you that 4 25ths is the same, let me get out my handy dandy calculator. If I do 4 divided by 25, I still get 1600ths. Just the same if I were to do 16 divided by 100, I get 1600ths. So this works to get to 100 or to get to 10 as long as you can multiply that pretty to get there. I want you to pause the video, try 4, 5, and 6 on your own. Try 4, 5, and 6 on your own. When you get to 6, hint, think about it like it's a tenths, that each one of those sticks is 10, and that'll help you make that problem just a little bit easier. Pause the video and try them on your own. Did you really do all 4 of those problems on your own? Double check, try again. Make sure you simplified your fraction. Number 4 got a little tricky because they weren't all in columns, so you had to count. So I knew that this was 9, 9, 9, 9. So 9, 18, 27, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. So 44 over 100. To simplify, you could have divided by 2. I recognized that I could divide by 4. So I did 44 divided by 4 to get 11, and 100 divided by 4 to get 25. So 11 25ths, and my decimal is 0.44 on that. For the next one, I counted 8 full ones and then 9 individuals. So that's 89 out of 100, 0.89. You can't simplify that fraction. Nothing goes into 89 and 100 besides 1. And then the last one, number 6, this is where things could go either one of 2 ways. Again, like we said, for the tenths, each line is 1/10. So I can count these horizontally too, that's okay. Here's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. So I get 3 over 10. Or you could have done it the other way and counted a full 30 out of 100, and then divided them both by 10 to get your 3 out of 100, or 3 out of 10 that way. Either way works. Either way works, you still arrive at the same number. And then as a decimal then, 3/10, 0.1 number after the decimal, it would be 0.3. 0.3. Do not worry about this bottom part for right now. Again, like I said, we're going to come back to these notes again tomorrow to see what they're like, or I guess next class. This is part of that second piece that we'll work on next class. So if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, go ahead and go into those practice problems.